Using copyrighted material in a review is a classic case of fair use.
John Carpenter's The Thing is one of the greatest horror films of all time. Despite initially failing at the box office and with critics, the film eventually gained a cult following and is now considered to be a masterpiece in the horror genre. The movie is so amazing that it's best to just leave it alone and not continue the story at all, right? But then the movie got the remake treatment, and the result is one of the worst remakes ever made. Despite having a masterpiece as the template, the remake managed to ruin everything that made the John Carpenter film so great.
Open your mouth!
If you guys enjoy this video, be sure to subscribe. It really helps out small channels like mine and will help you see my content in the future. Anyways, without further ado, here are the reasons why The Thing 2011 is the worst remake of all time. So to start off, what is The Thing 2011? Well, it shares the same title as John Carpenter's film, the posters look identical, and it has pretty much the exact same story beats as Carpenter's film. So that's it, it's a reboot. Easy, right? Well, kind of. You see, it's actually a prequel. So this movie is a prequel, but it also acts as a reboot. So I guess it's a pre-boot? The Thing 2011 follows the story of the Norwegian scientists that discovered the monster before it got to the American base that the John Carpenter film was set in. So The Thing 2011 is a bad idea from the premise alone. In the John Carpenter version, there's this scene where the main characters go to visit their Norwegian base. Here we see that it's absolutely destroyed and our minds are filled with so many questions. Why is there an axe in the wall? How did this guy die so gruesomely? And what the hell is this thing? The horror from this scene comes from the mystery. We see the aftermath of these events, but the fact that we have no idea what happened makes our minds run wild. This is a really subtle and effective way to scare the viewer. Anything we make up in our head will immediately be scarier than what they could literally show to us. To create a prequel that explains everything that happened ruins what makes that scene from the Carpenter film work. I want to emphasize that the existence of newer movies does not retroactively make great movies from the past bad. What I'm trying to say is that a core issue of the 2011 pre-boot is that it doesn't understand anything that made the John Carpenter film so effective. I guess we'll start with the first scene. We immediately see these sciencey dudes and they're looking for the source of a signal, and then, oh no, their car falls into a poorly rendered CGI cavern, so scary. This CGI environment they're in is one of the least convincing CGI environments I've ever seen. But it's okay because they see a UFO underground, so that's cool, I guess. Next, we get to meet our main character, Kate. Kate is like the blandest, least interesting name ever. She's played by Mary Elizabeth Winstead, so we're just gonna call her Mew. So Mew's doing some sciencey thing when Vaughn from Community shows up. I guess he did really well for himself after Annie dumped him. So Vaughn introduces Mew to this really important sciencey guy, and he tells her that him and his team discovered something in Antarctica, and they want Mew's help to determine what it is. It's really strange that this guy Mew has never met before just asks her to get on a helicopter and fly to Antarctica with him the next day, and after barely giving her any additional information, she just agrees.
And I guess I don't have any time to think about this.
No, I'm sorry. I need your answer right now.
Well, I'm in.
Like, she's clearly at work. Wouldn't she have to check in with her boss first before she leaves for several weeks? Whatever, who cares? Movies are stupid anyway.
I worked for that guy for 3 years, and I've never seen him this excited.
Bro, your boy looked bored as fuck. So then the scene ends and we see Mew on this helicopter going to Antarctica and speaking with these other sciencey guys. Then she gets off the helicopter and meets an entire group of scientists, and they all start telling her about the discovery and how they want her to help them out with it. Here's a question. Why doesn't the movie just start with Mew on the helicopter? I mean, think about it. The opening scene was just these three nobodies falling down a terrible digital effect and discovering the UFO, and then there's the scene where Mew meets the head science dude. The necessary information that the audience gets in these two scenes are that the Norwegians discovered a UFO underground, and that Mew is going to help them figure out what it is that they found. But all that information is conveyed in this scene where Mew meets all the scientists. I'd even say that this information was presented better in this scene too. I mean, if we remove the first scene, then nobody has to see that awful CGI cavern, and we don't really need to know how they discovered the UFO. I think it would be more effective for the audience not to see this, because then we get to go into the Antarctic base being just as confused as the main character is, and we can discover information with her as the movie goes on. Also, we don't really need to know how she got the job. It's not like anyone saw the John Carpenter movie and complained that we didn't see MacReady's interview process or anything. So why not just remove the first two scenes? Well, you see, without credits, this movie's only 94 minutes and 5 seconds, and if you were to remove those first two scenes, then the movie would be less than 90 minutes, which is really difficult to get past a studio and to market to people. So here we go, a movie where the first two scenes are completely pointless. Off to a great start. So the science dudes take Mew down this ice cavern, and I gotta say, this set just looks awful. We're supposed to believe that this is a real ice cave, but it looks cheap, and none of the actors are acting cold. In the John Carpenter film, the sets were chilled to 40 degrees so that the actors' performances would be more believable. They are acting cold because they're actually cold. Meanwhile, in the 2011 pre-boot, they all just wear jackets and nobody's even shivering. Even the filmmakers realized this looked stupid, so their solution was to computer generate fake-looking ice breaths coming out of their mouths. Everything in this shot looks fake as shit. Then Mew meets all of the scientists in more of a casual setting. She gets to meet Tormund from Game of Thrones. Why does this movie have one actor from both of my quarantine binges in it? This is a little thing, but this movie has a guy who likes dogs that looks and acts exactly like the guy from the John Carpenter movie who also likes dogs. Are you trying to be a prequel or a reboot? This may be a small detail, but trust me when I tell you that this isn't the last time that this movie shamelessly rips off the John Carpenter film. Then they drill open the ice that the monster's trapped in to get a tissue sample. Everybody has this party to celebrate their discovery. I feel like showing characters in a casual setting is a great opportunity to develop them. In John Carpenter's film, we see just enough of this group of characters to understand their personalities and the dynamic within the group. Clark is an introvert that likes dogs. MacReady is a no-nonsense manly man. Knowles likes disco music and rollerblading. It's a group of characters that feels like a real group of people. We get this deep sense that the group has been functioning for a long time before the movie started. Question for everyone. Do any of you know anything about anyone in the 2011 pre-boot? I shit you not, the only character with a personality I can describe is the main scientist guy because he's a big old meanie pants. Nobody else, not even the main character, has a personality. The only character I can even remember the name of is Kate, and I've seen this movie 3 goddamn times, and 1 time is too many. It's like they did nothing to develop these characters at all. The movie was really short too. Why not just make the party scene longer and have more conversations between everyone? Given the way the film is, every character is just mincemeat to be slaughtered later on. Then Nameless Mincemeat number 4 goes to look at the frozen monster alone, and we get this fake out jump scare in the most cliche way possible.
Hi sisters, James Charles here.
How embarrassing is that? But then there's an actual scare where the monster jumps out of the ice and escapes. Okay, first of all, why have the lazy fake out jump scare in this scene if there was just going to be an actual scare literally 23 seconds later? It deflates all the tension. Secondly, the CGI effect of the monster just looks laughably bad. So Nameless Mincemeat number 4 tells everyone about how the monster escaped and they all go searching for it. You guys want to see one of the funniest kills ever? They even shine a light on the monster so you get a full view of it with no subtlety at all. The effects look bad and nothing's left open for your mind to make up anything. I like movies that don't require me to think. So now everyone is sad because the monster killed their friend. We're just so sad. He always wanted to have a personality. I love how now that he died, they try to retroactively add character development as if they had done that beforehand.
And we can do small children.
One of the biggest sources of unintentional comedy in the whole film for me is when this guy says that they're all shocked.
We're all shocked.
They all just look bored. Most of these actors don't even look like they realize the camera's rolling. This guy's just drinking tea. Alrighty, so I'm about to do something crazy. I'm going to say something positive about this movie. We get a scene of the characters performing an autopsy on the corpse of the monster. This is a moment that totally rips off an entire scene from the John Carpenter film, but it does have a pretty amazing practical effect. They actually built this disgusting looking corpse of the monster. It's clearly a very real and complex model, and whoever made it did a great job. Now at some point so far you may have wondered, Rich, why are you being so harsh on the CGI? Yeah, it's not great, but tons of popular movies have bad VFX work. Why are you being particularly mean towards this movie?
Excuse me for interrupting. It's just that I couldn't help but feel the vibrations in the air of someone discussing my biggest horror heartbreak. Let's talk about special effects. There's a long-running argument amongst film lovers about what you should do when you need something to exist on camera that doesn't actually exist in real life. Some say practical effects are the way, that you should just do your best to physically make the thing on set. Others say there's nothing latex and corn syrup can do that ones and zeros can't do better. They're both wrong. I'm gonna set you straight. The answer to whether practical or digital effects are better is it depends on the movie. More specifically, it depends on the audience of the movie. Since the rise of the blockbuster around the late 70s, movie studios have been making movies according to how well they think they can market them to 4 categories of people: male or female, and over and under 25. The general assumption for the suits who produce horror is that it's a genre for males under 25. This sucks for several reasons, but in the case of the 2011 Thing, it sucks because it represents a complete misunderstanding of the audience. So, I don't personally think that the CG Thing looks that bad. It's a perfectly serviceable example of 2011 effects. But the original had practical effects. It is iconic for its practical effects. So accordingly, when the 2011 version was pitched, everybody on board assumed it was going to be made with practical effects. They assumed it so hard that not only did they hire effects studio ADI to design and build it all, they shot the entire movie with practical fucking effects. But again, this is a horror movie, and horror is for people assumed to have the lowest attention span, males under 25. So the standards for what's considered good has to change, especially when, oops, you've shown the movie to test audiences and they didn't like it. It's unclear exactly what happened, but word through the grapevine is that the studio heads decided that the effects were at fault for the bad test screening, that they, quote, looked too 80s. Well, test audiences would say that. They're a cross-section of the viewing public at large. They don't care about the Thing any more than any other movie. So let's say we're the studio. How do we make the people care? Well, clearly it's by throwing all the practical effects we've already done into the garbage and giving them a display of the finest computer graphics technology available. It'll all look super dated in 2 years, but nobody will remember this movie by then anyway, so who cares? See the issue here? There's a suggestion in every frame of this movie that whoever had the final word here either doesn't care or really doesn't get why there's enough interest in this movie to sink millions of dollars into making it in the first place. This is a movie made by people who think that the effects of the original were a bug, not a feature. When John Carpenter made his version of The Thing in 1982, CG work was still in its infancy. So if you wanted to make a monster, you really had to make a monster. The effects work for The Thing were made by Rob Bottin, who notoriously ran himself into the literal hospital with ulcers and pneumonia from the stress of designing, making, and overseeing all the puppetry. Those are old guy diseases. He was 22. Rob Bottin kind of vanished into the night after The Thing, but that's okay, because what he did in this movie is a lifetime's worth of work. It basically distills everything awesome about effects in the 80s. It is ramshackle, it is weird, it is sticky, it is gross. People like to say that the benefit of practical effects is that they look more realistic, But in the case of The Thing, I disagree. Having the monster on set almost certainly got better performances out of the actors, but I don't think that the 1982 Thing looks very realistic at all. They do their best, but it's not realism that keeps people going back to it, because the 1982 Thing is better than realistic. It's art. It's a really good special effects artist working with an invested, experienced director and committed actors who know how to sell it. It's the kind of cooperation that can't really happen if you have a studio looming over you, making sure the product can be marketed to an audience that doesn't care. The corner the studio painted themselves into in 2011 is that by marketing this movie toward an imaginary audience, they ignored the audience that actually existed. The challenge with making this movie was big, but not insurmountable. The fact is that the pre-boot's only real draw is its relationship to the original. The only way this movie gets in front of a bunch of eyes is through the second wave. People who go to see it because the smaller first wave said it was good. And the first wave is going to be almost entirely people who love the original. So you make it for them, god damn it. On the one hand, good practical effects would have been a huge part of that. On the other hand, this movie still bites pretty hard, so I doubt that would have saved it anyway. You were saying?
Did either of you get to take home the thing that walks on its hands?
Oh man!
Would that be cool?
I know, it would be really cool to actually have.
Yeah, I don't think anybody was. I think that thing costs like $3.5 million.
Exactly. I think it's
Wait, they put CGI over a practical effect that costs $3.5 million? Imagine $3.5 million just burning. We'll never know how those practical effects would have turned out. Hell, for all we know, they could have looked almost as bad as the CGI anyway. I also want to emphasize that even if this movie had great practical effects, it's not like it would save the movie or anything. There was apparently a change.org petition to release the pilot version, which gained more steam in 2020 because of the popularity of #release the Snyder Cut. What the fuck am I reading? So then Mew pulls this metal chunk out of the body. She looks very confused at it and says this.
So if this was in his arm, what's it doing out of him now?
Excuse me, did you forget the part where he was just impaled, eaten alive, shot at, and burned alive?
So if this was in his arm, what's it doing out of him now?
It's a good question.
No, it's not! So then Mew sees the cells of the creature eat and replicate other cells under a microscope. 4 guys are getting on a helicopter to leave, and Mew then looks into the shower and sees bloody teeth fillings on the floor. She walks into the shower and sees blood everywhere, so she becomes suspicious of anyone in the helicopter and tries to get them not to leave. Then, this happens. This brings me to another aspect of the John Carpenter film that the 2011 pre-boot doesn't understand. Firstly, yeah, the CGI looks like hot garbage, but more importantly, the movie doesn't understand the monster from the Carpenter film at all. There was a clear psychological train of thought from that monster. It hides itself in plain sight as a human, and it knows that it's vulnerable. It would only show itself when it was alone with another human and has the opportunity to eat them, or when the entire group discovers who the monster is and it needs to defend itself. It only transforms in front of other people when it hunts or is hunted. In the 2011 pre-boot, it just shows itself whenever the director's afraid that the movie's getting boring. On a helicopter with several people who don't even know that there's a monster? Sure, reveal yourself, fuck it, who cares? Can you at least pretend to give a shit? So Mew goes back to the shower and sees that all the blood that she saw earlier is now missing. All the scientists are discussing leaving to go to another base when Mew pops in and tells them that they can't leave because any one of them can be the monster. She shows them the fillings and tells everyone that she found them in a puddle of blood in the shower. The conclusion she comes to is that the monster can clone cells, but not any inorganic material. This detail about the monster not being able to clone inorganic material seems like such a minute detail, but it's treated as some sort of a smoking gun throughout the whole movie. This is the primary piece of information that they use to figure out who's the monster and who's human throughout the entire film. It's such a strange and specific detail that surely the director painstakingly watched John Carpenter's film and checked every single frame to make sure that the monster in that movie never replicated inorganic material or metal or anything, right? Well, guess what? I rewatched the entire John Carpenter film just to look for this very detail, and it's not even true! They make an effort to show that the monster rips apart its prey's clothes and then recreates what they were wearing. When they throw Vance on the table to check his heart attack, he's secretly the Thing in this moment, and it's clear from this shot that he has metal on his shoes and a metal belt buckle. At 1 hour, 11 minutes, and 37 seconds, you can see that George is the monster and he has 2 metal buttons on his jacket. Then again, at 1 hour, 35 minutes, and 41 seconds, you can see Dr. Blair, who is the monster, has a metal belt buckle on his trousers. I guess the director thought that this was such a minute detail that nobody with a life would go back and check if it was accurate. Well, guess what, buddy? I haven't left my house in over a year. You want to get nitpicky? Let's get nitpicky. So then this woman asks to speak with Mew alone. Even though Mew knows that any of them could be the monster, she just willingly gets into a room alone with her. And then, oh no, plot twist. Turns out the lady was a bad special effect the entire time. One of the aspects of the original that made it so scary is that if you were caught in a room alone with the monster, you would have no hope of survival. So everyone had to engage in a battle of wits in order to never be alone with the monster. Here, Mew's alone with the monster and has plot armor and just escapes. This makes the monster so much less scary and takes away any intelligent strategy that the characters and the monster can use to their advantage. Anyway, then we get to see this hilarious visual. Then they burn the monster to death and take the monster's corpse and the corpse of their friend outside to burn them. While burning the bodies, Mew tells everyone that the monster spreads like a virus, and Vaughn says that they should test everybody's blood to determine who the monster is.
Is it still among us?
But then, oh no, somebody burned down the room where all the blood samples were. Everyone argues and then Mew interrupts them and tells them there's another way to test who the monster is. Now we get to see the scene of the movie that is easily the one that I hate the most. The filling test scene. Despite the fact that the movie pretends to be a prequel, it still has many scenes that are shameless rip-offs of scenes from the John Carpenter film. Of all these scenes, this one is the most egregious. This scene is a ripoff of the blood test scene from the Carpenter film. The blood test scene in John Carpenter's The Thing is the best scene in the whole movie, and one of the best scenes in the history of horror. In this scene, MacReady comes back from outside the base, and everyone else thinks that he's the monster. They all gather weapons to point at him, but when they see him, he's holding a flare and a bomb, so if any of them try to kill him, it would kill everyone in the base. Using the bomb as leverage, MacReady forces everyone to drop their weapons and tie each other to the couch. Then MacReady explains that given their interaction with the monster, he realized that each part of the monster becomes a separate organism. He believes that if he drops a hot wire into the monster's blood, then it would react as if it were a wounded animal. Anyone whose blood doesn't react would be human. So everyone cuts their fingers and drips blood into a petri dish. As MacReady tests everyone's blood, we see characters argue with him and protest. Tension builds as he tests each blood sample. When the tension's at its peak, we see one of the best jump scares in the history of film.
This is pure nonsense. Doesn't prove a thing.
I thought you'd feel that way, Gary. We'll do you last.
That scene was a masterclass in building suspense. Alright, let's see how the 2011 pre-boot ruins it. Firstly, instead of blood, they decide to look for fillings because they previously said that the monster can't replicate inorganic material, which is wrong, but whatever. One of the Norwegians points a flamethrower at everyone and Mew tells them to open their mouths so that she can shine a flashlight onto their teeth. Anyone with fillings is deemed an innocent person, and anyone without fillings is deemed possibly the monster. Everyone's fillings are the most over-the-top looking metal fillings ever. What if somebody had seamless looking dental composite fillings? There's also a lot of unintentional comedy here.
Open your mouth.
Open your mouth!
Open your mouth! This scene has absolutely no tension at all. The blood test scene used no music, so it sends a message to your brain that it's super serious. The filling test scene uses annoying stock horror movie music with annoying musical cues for everything. The music for the pre-boot was done by Mark Beltrami. Who could forget such classic film scores such as Live Free or Die Hard, or World War Z, Gemini Man, or Chaos Walking. Chaos Walking. More like Chaos Walking out of the theater. Thank you. I'll be here all week.
Brother, this guy stinks!
Also, the blood test scene was conclusive as to whether or not a person was a monster. The filling test doesn't even conclude anything at all. It just gives a handful of people who still may or may not be the monster. The blood test scene also ended in a scare, followed by the monster revealing itself and attacking everyone. It gave a climax to that scene that was built up to. The filling test scene has no scares in it at all, making it seem kind of irrelevant. What's the point of a scene if it doesn't even amount to anything? In a lot of the promotional material for the 2011 pre-boot, the people who made this film keep calling it an homage to the John Carpenter film and how much they love that movie. I want to believe them, but when I watch the movie they made and just see a lot of vague visual recreations that contain none of the substance that made the John Carpenter movie work, I really have to ask, what the fuck did you even like about it? Did you even watch the movie? I think now's a great time to complain about the characters. They suck, but why? Everyone at the Antarctic base has seemingly known each other for the last several months at this point, and they've just met Mew like 2 days ago. But now, in this scene, Mew's just telling everyone what to do, and they're all doing exactly what she tells them for no reason. Much of the tension from the John Carpenter film came from the fact that nobody trusted each other. In order for MacReady to get everyone to cooperate for the blood test, he needed to threaten them with an explosive, and then fucking murk one of them. Then, during the test, everybody's arguing with him and yelling over each other. In the 2011 pre-boot, Mew just starts randomly telling everyone what to do, and they just do it. It's like halfway through the movie, everyone loses the ability to think unless Mew instructs them to. This one guy is literally holding a flamethrower at the monster while it's charging at him, and he doesn't think to shoot it until Mew tells him to. Even though they have a boss, they just start ignoring him. The closest thing you get to arguments are people kind of complaining, and then just doing whatever Mew told them to do anyway.
So I'm gonna get killed because I floss.
Just do it. Okay, open.
She's leading people without doing anything to earn it. She's basically King Bran. In the John Carpenter film, every single character feels like they contribute to the group equally. They have their own unique roles to fill. Cooper and Blair are both doctors, Knowles is a chef, and Clark takes care of the dogs. Yeah, MacReady's the main character, but he is just one piece of the entire team. In the 2011 pre-boot, Mew does everything. She is a doctor, and a scientist, and a leader, and she makes every single major discovery in the film. Every other character around her are just mincemeat to be murdered. All these side characters are getting killed left and right like it's nothing, and she doesn't sustain a single injury in the entire movie. The fear of the John Carpenter movie comes from never knowing who you can trust. In the 2011 pre-boot, nobody even accuses Mew of being a monster. Not a single time. If the movie doesn't treat Mew being a monster as a possibility, it completely removes a key element that can scare the audience, which is kind of important considering that this is supposed to be a horror film.
Open your mouth!
So now the group has narrowed down who could be the monster to 4 candidates. Now this guy, who's been previously shown to only understand Norwegian, magically understands instructions from Mew spoken in perfect English.
Watch them.
So they carry this injured dude into a room, and then, oh no, plot twist, he was a bad special effect the whole time. Once again, the monster just had no reason to reveal itself in this situation. It's in front of an entire group of people and they all have weapons drawn and none of them know who the monster is. I guess the director just thought the movie was kinda getting boring, so he threw a monster in. Great. Then the monster kills some people in a way that seems like really dumb slapstick. Then Mew now has the ability to repair and operate a flamethrower. Cool. I guess she really didn't like that ending of Game of Thrones. Then we have a spooky hallway scene. The monster here turns into just any standard cliche movie monster. It kills the lead scientist guy, and then we have one of the strangest moments in the whole movie. An arm from the monster crawls up a wall and this guy swings an axe at it, cutting it in half. That was really dumb of him because he just turned one monster into three. The two sections of the body and then the blood spatter on the wall are now, given the logic of the movies, individual creatures. But then, the two halves of the monster morph back together for some reason, and Mew flamethrowers both of them. Shouldn't the two halves have just acted like individuals? It seems like it would have been an advantage for them to have more numbers. Why did they fuse back together? Also, there's that blood spatter on the wall. Certainly that's now another monster and needs to be burned. Mew tells this guy not to touch it, so she clearly knows that it's dangerous.
Don't touch it.
But then they just walk away! And the movie never acknowledges this detail again. They just made like 3 plot holes in 30 seconds. I swear the movie just put this in here to fuck with me, and me specifically, and nobody else. Then this dude's being chased by the monster, and right before he's about to be killed, Mew just Deus Ex Machina appears to save him. Why have other characters accomplish things when you could just let the main character do everything? And then one of the monsters takes a car and drives away. I guess the monster just knows how to drive a car now. Why not? Then the last 10 minutes of this movie, they just completely give up and become a Michael Bay film. They run into this CGI UFO, Mew falls down a few stories in this CGI cavern, but then wakes up with no injuries and perfect makeup. Mew discovers this weird CGI Tetris looking thing. I don't even know what I'm looking at this point. My only guess is that they were trying to be symbolic of something? I don't know, I think it's open to interpretation to the audience, kind of like the monolith from 2001: A Space Odyssey or something. Listen, every reasonable person was already too bored to give a shit at this point, and everyone who likes this movie is too dumb to think about symbolism.
I'm going to stop you right there because there actually is an explanation for this, and it's just as ridiculous as you can imagine. Initially, this movie had a different ending. Mary Elizabeth Winstead goes down into the ship, like we see, and there she finds the pilot of the ship surrounded by a bunch of jars full of specimens from some sort of interstellar biological expedition. The pilot wasn't the thing. The pilot collected the thing, which then escaped and attacked. What happened was that the test audience, who you'll remember likely didn't care much to begin with, were also very confused by this. And honestly, I kind of get it. The design for the pilot is cool, but it has too many thing-type qualities. It's not clear exactly what you're looking at. So let's think like the studio again. How do we fix this problem? Well, we could redesign the pilot to clarify that it's a different species from the thing. We could send Joel Edgerton down there with Mary Elizabeth Winstead so that she can say to him, "Oh, I think this is the pilot." We could even just have her say something out loud to the air. Or we could just scrap the scene entirely, have her react to a tennis ball, run out of time to decide what she's looking at, and just drop in a giant Rubik's Cube that's never explained and completely breaks the color palette of the rest of the movie. Great! We did it! Here's the thing, no pun intended. The 1982 Thing was a cult film. It was a failure in every way that studios traditionally use as benchmarks for success. It was over budget. It didn't make money. Critics hated it. The worth of the thing wasn't realized until the kids who saw it grew up and started making and talking about movies themselves. Who cares what the general public thinks? This movie isn't for them. The concept of the thing is so strange, so anti-closure, that it fundamentally can't deliver the same kind of uncanniness if a studio makes it into a corporate focus group product. And the fact that in the process of failing at doing exactly that, the studio de facto blamed ADI, the only people who actually cared about their job, is the biggest possible slap in the face to everybody who loves this franchise. It's not that the 2011 Thing is that bad. There are obviously worse movies in both content and context. It's just that the idea that the same corporate system that wrote off the original Thing as a failure not only changed their tune and tried to profit off of it once it became a success, then willfully refused to understand anything from the movie's audience to the genre it belongs to, that idea makes me sad. It upsets me. It's the kind of thing that just makes me feel kind of bad about how movies are made, which is not a nice position to put people who love movies. This shit, it hurts my feelings.
Ooh, maybe it's symbolic of the $6.5 million it lost at the box office. Then it ends with a Michael Bay action scene. Pew, pow, pow, explosions!
Cool guys don't look at explosions.
If you aren't already convinced that this movie hates the John Carpenter movie, this last scene has to. So Mew, for no reason at all, starts telling this dude how she knew that he wasn't the monster, and she points to the fact that he was wearing an earring.
You know how I knew you were human when you showed it back at base?
No.
Your earring.
Then, she looks at him and sees that he no longer is wearing an earring, thus confirming that he is the monster here, and she burns him alive. Allow me to explain why this is a complete fuck you to the fans of the John Carpenter film. So that film ends with MacReady and Childs sitting around the rubble of their base. We saw the monster blow up, so we think it's dead at this point. As Childs and MacReady sit down together, it's obvious that they cannot reasonably trust each other to be human, since there was time that they both got separated. We as an audience also can't tell who's human because there was a time when both characters were off screen. During that time, either one of them could have potentially turned into the monster. A lot of fans have fun theorizing about this ending. There's a popular theory that Childs is the monster. I disagree with that. I say both of them aren't the monster, mainly because if just one of them was the monster, it would have just killed the other one in that scene, but whatever. Obviously, the point of the ending isn't to determine a concrete explanation of who might be the monster. The point is that the film is so oozing with paranoia that it's infecting the audience as much as it is the characters. Knowing this, it's completely okay to get a deeper level of enjoyment out of trying to figure out all the details and come up with a theory. You can have fun doing that, that's fine. The reason the ending of the pre-boot is insulting is because Childs was wearing an earring in the final scene. By pointing out the earring, the director's trying to retroactively change the ending of John Carpenter's film so that there's no way that Childs is the monster. Fuck off. If this guy was really a thing the whole time, why didn't he kill Mew during the several times that they were alone together? Then Mew just sits in a car and I guess waits to freeze to death. And then it ends! What was the point of any of that? The movie completely butchers every single thing that made the John Carpenter movie work. I genuinely hate this movie. It's my 4th least favorite movie of all time, and I wouldn't recommend it as a so bad it's good movie. Don't watch it to be like, oh, I want to compare the two. No, don't watch it. It's bad. Just throw the whole movie in the garbage. I'd like to also thank the Morbid Zoo for being in this video. She makes great, well-thought film analysis videos, and she also made a video comparing the two Thing movies, so maybe check it out. Subscribe to her channel. Help her hit 1,000 subscribers, because I think she really deserves it. Speaking of subscribers, I want to say thank you guys. I see all you guys commenting. I see so many of you guys that I recognize at this point in the comments of the videos, and it just means so much to me that you guys consistently watch my stuff, and I just want to tell you thank you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. I appreciate it so much. Goodbye.